All right, thank you, Michelle. Up next is Jana Dilley, who's the program manager for the City of Seattle's Urban Forestry and Outreach and Engagement Program, Trees for Seattle. Her work focuses on engaging Seattle's residents in the hands-on work of planting and maintaining a healthy, thriving urban forest, and her expertise spans urban forest policy and management, public engagement and communications, and supporting trees on residential property. Jana is an ISA-certified municipal arborist and a graduate of the Municipal Forestry Institute and has been working in the urban forestry field for 15 years. Please join me in welcoming Jana Dilley.
All right, good afternoon. Let's see, move this down, maybe? No, it's okay. All right, so as Michelle so nicely set up for me, I'm going to be talking about how the City of Seattle engages people in the work that we do around urban forestry. Before we get into that, though, I want to go back to something that John said at the beginning as he was introducing the evening or afternoon, and that is how we define the urban forest. And I think this is a really important piece to me, and if any of you have ever heard me speak before, you've probably seen this slide because it's something I always find important to start out with, and that is how I define the urban forest. And I define the urban forest as every single tree inside the city. So that includes trees in parks, of course, but it also includes trees along streets, trees in our private yards, trees in areas like large landowners, like the University of Washington. So every single tree is important, and every single tree contributes, and we approach that tree differently depending on what kind of land it's growing on. I think it's also really important to point out that urban forests, and I think a lot of you know this, they're planned, they're maintained, they're planted. They are not put there by squirrels, and there's an awful lot of work that goes into maintaining them, and it's very different from your urban or your wildlands forest. So the forest out on Mount Rainier is a very different forest than what we have here in the city. And I think those are just important things to always have in the back of our mind as we talk about urban forestry. So then, as Michelle said, I'm here to talk about how we engage the community. And there are a number of ways that we do that. The first piece I want to talk about is our Tree Ambassador Project. This is a great one that I personally get to work with. This is where we are engaging volunteers to work on public trees, particularly trees outside of parks areas. There are a couple different ways we do that. I'm going to get more into that. But the important thing to know is that we are now accepting applications. We recruit volunteers, lead volunteers once a year. So if you're interested in joining us, we encourage all of you. You can find more information on our website, which I'll share with you later on. But we have two different tracks or project types that our volunteers take on. The first one is our tree walks. So these are really fun, engaging tours of trees in a neighborhood, and notable, exceptional trees, trees that have a story, in ways we can talk to neighbors. And I think some of the power from tree walks comes, what I see is when you'll be out there, they're usually led by volunteers, you're literally walking down the street, you're talking about the trees in front of someone's house, and what I've seen happen time and time again is that someone comes out of the house and they say, hey, what are you doing? And you say, hey, we're talking about these trees. And they say, oh, you think my tree is important? That's so great. No, I never knew my tree is important. And it's this conversation that you get to have with people about what's right there in their yard. And the next thing you know, they're coming out of the house and joining you. And then the next person comes out with their dog, and someone comes out with their stroller. And you're picking up the neighborhood as you go along. And it's a lot of fun. So we lead tree walks usually at least once a month during the summer months. We haven't done as many during the cold, rainy months because we don't get as many people out then. But at least once a month, often more. And the next one coming up is this Saturday in Wedgwood, April 8th. So if you'd like to join us, please do. These walks also exist in self-guided form. So on our website, we have about 36 different walks at this point, I think, from neighborhoods all over the city. You can download them and take them out on your own time. Our second project track is the tree stewardship piece. And this is another really powerful bit of work we do. This is where we have volunteers doing some physical care and stewardship of our public trees in landscapes, and particularly in SDOT right-of-way landscapes. So You think of this, you guys have all seen this, those little triangle patches of land that exist all over the city, usually between streets. And they'll often have a few very nice mature trees on them, sometimes even evergreens. And then they have a lot of invasive species and other weeds that are choking out those trees. So what we do is bring in volunteers to help us get those weeds out of there, make better growing conditions for the trees so we have these healthy mature trees that can survive and thrive, and also get the garbage out of there, improve pedestrian access, make it a more valuable community asset. And going back to something else that John was saying earlier, these patches are really important in terms of creating that connectivity in the city. So if you think about the city, as John was saying, we have these parks here and parks here, and what we have in between is the street trees and these patches of land. They're literally islands in asphalt because they're between streets. So they're really important pieces to have these patches of green to create connectivity across the city. So our next good event coming up here, on April 22nd, we actually have 2 events that day. One is in Beacon Hill. The other one is in Georgetown, and we could use a lot more volunteers in Georgetown. So if you want to come out to Georgetown on Earth Day, we would love to have you. These are a few before and after pictures so you can get a better sense of what we're doing. So you see on the left here, it's our volunteer Sharon. She's got what we had this beautiful tree here, large evergreen tree. As you can see, the ivy's going quite a ways up its trunk there. And then the after picture where we've got the ivy out and we've got some nice fresh mulch on. Here's another one. This one's over in West Seattle. So down on the left, you've got the before picture there. And this is where I mentioned briefly, we work very closely with the Department of Transportation in these projects. These are their rights-of-way areas. And you can see on the left, we've got some pretty poor pedestrian access. We have a lot of weeds. There are a number of standing dead trees in this site. So we worked very closely with their crews, came out and removed those dead trees. Our volunteers came in, cleared away those weeds from the existing trees, improved the pedestrian access. And then our volunteers were able to go back again and add some new trees to that site. Next exciting piece here, the Green Seattle Partnership. Michelle mentioned this earlier. This is in our parks lands, and I know there are people here who work on this more than I do, so I'm not necessarily the expert, but it's similar work in that we're doing a lot of invasive species removal, trying to restore our natural areas in our parks, and getting in those native plants, saving our large native trees. There's 102 parks that we're working on. The Green Seattle Partnership has events almost every weekend in a park near you. I'm sure you can find them. But they do have a great one coming up, of course, also on Earth Day at Pigeon Point. And this, I always like to use this illustration because I think it really brings home why the Green Seattle Partnership is important. And what you see on the left is this is what would happen if we didn't do restoration work in our natural areas. Ivy takes over trees pretty quickly, as do other invasive species. What you see on the left is we start with sort of a deciduous forest with a lot of ivy and other invasive species, and it creeps up, and over time, what you get is a barren ivy landscape. It's not good for birds or anyone else. But with restoration, the hope is what we can take, starting at that same spot on the left, get in some of those native conifers, native understory, and move to a more stable, restored native environment in our parks areas. Okay, so another fun piece. You may have heard of this one, our Trees for Neighborhoods project. We're planting 1,000 trees with residents every year. It's going back to how both John and Michelle were talking about how our residential areas are particularly important, and that's where a lot of our canopy is. So we want to help residents to plant new trees in those areas. We do a lot to make sure that make this as easy and as fun as possible for participants to take part in. Part of that is helping people get street tree permits, because that can be a tricky process, and about 20% or so of our trees end up being street trees, and the rest end up in yards. And it was really important to us that our trees don't just get planted, but they survive and thrive. We want them to become large, mature, stable trees. Otherwise, the money and time we invested in planting the trees wasn't worth it. So we maintain a relationship with everyone that we give a tree to for at least 5 years, working on watering and care reminders, doing everything we can to get those trees going. One great thing that we do is that we send out field crews to evaluate the street trees every year to see how they're doing, and then leave a note with the property owner who's taking care of them, saying this is what we found, and this is what you can do, and here's our phone number if you want to talk about it. And I think that's a very powerful way to help increase that survival rate. Through Trees in Neighborhoods, we offer workshops on species and site selection. This is going back to getting the right tree in the right place. Always a good motto in the urban forestry world. Workshops on planting. If you want a tree to survive, that starts with planting it the right way. And pruning as well, trying to get back to creating a healthy form and structure when a tree is young. And we offer a lot of technical assistance. We answer a lot of questions. We're here for people. So I mentioned the Department of Transportation earlier. They do a lot of work when it comes to urban forestry. And a particular bit of work they're doing right now is around their street tree inventory. And this is just a really great thing to do. It's a multi-year effort, but the hope is by the end of it that we will have cataloged all the street trees in Seattle, which will be, give us much more powerful data to manage our trees with. We're also going to be identifying planting sites so we can better plan our plantings and then better understand the location, the species, and the health of our existing trees. So their existing inventory is also available online. So if you want to know more about the trees in front of your house, this is a great way to do it. You can find it. You can go look up, this is what it looks like. You can zoom into whatever part of town you want. You can see over on the right-hand side there to give you a lot of information about that tree. When it was planted. If it's in a neighborhood that we have inventoried recently, you can have a lot of assurance that that's good data. If it's a neighborhood we haven't got to inventorying yet, you may find some inaccuracies. So the Department of Transportation has put together a street tree management plan. It's a pretty good, robust plan. It's focused on the inventory, which I mentioned, but also how they're going to maintain their existing trees, replace trees, and connect with people. And they, right now, are really looking for feedback on how they're going to implement this plan over the next couple of years. So they have a survey open right now. And there are some handouts, I think, down in the entranceway we came in that have more information on that, and they have this URL if you want to pick it up. Because they would love to hear your feedback. This survey is open at least through the end of the month. And it's a great way for your voices to be heard and how the Department of Transportation goes about their work. So looking to the future, we're always thinking about how we can improve and what else we can do. And one thing that's near and dear to my heart, if you know me, you've probably heard me say it because I think it would be a great thing to do, is that I'd really like to expand the volunteer work we do with our street trees, our young street trees in particular, to help them become more established. And we've done a little bit of this work, but we just don't quite have the resources we need to make it a robust program. So I'm hoping something that we can grow in the future. And so what I'm talking about here, so here you can see these women are working on some street trees down in the Rainier Beach area. And it's pretty simple. It's weeding, mulching, and taking suckers away from the base of the trunk, which is what is happening here. And that's just, it's simple, it's easy, but it's a powerful way to make a big impact on the health of a tree and to help get that tree established, mature and growing, because it's one of the trees large and established that it really brings those benefits to the area. So that's one piece that I dream about. Another piece is, again, getting back to the importance of those mature trees existing on our in backyards and in private property that makes up so much of our urban forest. And I would like to think of ways that we can help engage residents in caring for those trees? Are there ways that we can make it easier for people to have large mature trees in their backyard? Are there ways we can help people know how to deal with ivy around their trees so their ivy is not rotting out the base of their tree and doesn't become a hazard? Can we do things like, can we help people rake leaves if they don't have a physical ability to do that? What can we do to help people maintain trees? Can we set up an incentive program or some sort of support for arborist care if there's some pruning that needs to happen on that tree? So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but it's another piece that I dream about. And then thinking back to the Green Seattle Partnership, we put a lot of work into restoring these native areas. But right next door, often there are, these political lines, other private land that isn't under that same level of restoration. What can we do to work with those boundary lands? How can we take the restoration work that we're doing inside the parks property and do it in those neighborhood lands next door? Because if you have that invisible line and you've still got what looks like a continuous area, but on one side restoration work is not going on, you're quickly reseeding the area where we spend a lot of time and money doing restoration work with all those invasive species that we're trying to get rid of. So how can we build partnerships with those adjacent property owners and help them do the same type of restoration work that we're doing on parks lands? So a couple ways to connect with us, because we always like to hear from you. Our signature urban forestry event every year is Arbor Day. It's always in October. Arbor Day is in October because that is the best time of year to plant a tree in Seattle. Some of you know that National Arbor Day is coming up, but we celebrate Arbor Day in the fall here because spring is not a good time to plant trees in Seattle. We have a monthly e-newsletter. You can sign up and subscribe. It's a great way to keep up with what the city is doing. You can also follow us on our Facebook page. And if you need to talk to us, we have a general phone number, 684-TREE, a general email, treesforseattle@seattle.gov, and our website is simple, seattle.gov/trees. And that is all that I have.